get into things that'll help us continue to help us to grow and to thrive in this daily life. Simplistic things, just practical things that'll help us grow. And so survival tactics are things that you need to live in this life, and things that'll help us to be functional and fruitful as we go from day to day. I'm glad that everybody could be on here, and those that are striving to continue to press forward in these times, knowing that it's not just going to happen. You don't just luck up or fall into being in a good place or being in a productive situation, but you have to plan, you have to strategize, you have to improvise, and you have to build yourself up and grow. And so these survival tactics are things that we're using to grow and to develop and to be better in this life that we're living. Last week we dealt with kneading dough concerning money and life decisions with money, according to some Bible principles and such things. And so this week, I want to deal with the survival tactic concerning self-discipline. And so today's lesson is called Major Pain. Many of you may have seen, well, some of you, I ain't going to assume everybody, but some of you may have seen a movie that came out back in the 90s called Major Pain, with one of the Wayans brothers. And he's an ex-military guy that's kind of been banished off to go work at this boarding school, and he's military school for young men. And it's hilarious. It's a comedy. And he's supposed to be trying to whip these boys in shape, because they're out of, respectful mentality, and they don't have good mannerisms, and kind of everybody's giving up on them, and they've been sent to this school. And then so he's one that's been kicked out of the military in a sense, or degraded down to this position. And so now his job is to create in these young men discipline or order from his basis. But he's been sent down there because he has been disciplined for his actions and his functioning and the way he's carried himself in the military. And so the story goes that he's there to help the boys, but in turn, he begins to help himself. He begins to learn how to love and to have relationship with people, not just being duty bound or stuck in a format where he has no spirit in the sense of relationship besides his job. And so boys touch his heart, and it's a pretty funny story and things. It may not be church etiquette always, but it's a good learning tool and a good lesson. But a point out of that is that I want you to understand that self-discipline, and his name is kind of a dual purpose, a major pain. I think it alludes to what it takes to be disciplined. Discipline is like a chastising. It's in a sense of refining oneself. The definition for it is a training or exhortation or a warning in the common dictionary. And this is what it takes for us to be disciplined. It takes pain. It takes challenges. It takes being in uncomfortable circumstances to actually be better. And so the whole story goes on, and his name is Major Pain because he brings the pain and the hurt, but he's exuding diligence and what it takes to be self-disciplined. And in life, that's what we have to exhort, and we got to be able to practice is discipline even past the point of pain. And the text tonight I want to look at is 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7. And in that Bible, in the Bible scripture, this message is to a young man in the ministry that Paul is mentoring and he's guiding. And he's trying to help him to be ready for challenges that are bigger than him. And so Paul writes, he says, God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and a sound mind. Some translations say self-discipline. And that's what I want to play on tonight, is dealing with self-discipline. In the original translation of that word, or is self-discipline or self-control, is the ability to understand or to be safe or have sound mindedness. And that's really what discipline takes. It takes us having an awareness and an understanding of reality, what it takes to be successful, what it takes to be productive, what it takes to be responsible. Because when you don't understand the magnitude of the situation that you're in, you begin to make a poor decisions. You begin to jump into things that are less fitting to the circumstance. And so discipline brings about or draws out of us urgency and the ability to actually beckon and supply to the demand of the circumstance. And so when discipline comes, you got to do things to help bring it out if you don't naturally have it. And the intimidation of self-discipline sometimes is that we assume people just naturally are disciplined, that people that are masters at things, that are good at things, that are successful at things is just because they were born that way, that they have that and that they're naturally good at it. That's why they're able to do it. And yes, we may have some inclinations naturally to do some things, but discipline is always associated to focus and self-desire. And so if you lack something, you have the ability to gain it if you're willing to commit yourself to the process. Years ago, the Philadelphia 76ers had a process. They were a losing team, been very bad, disastrous for years, hadn't made the playoffs, and they considered themselves on a train for development, and they followed the theme TTP, trust the process. And what their objective was is that they were going to sacrifice in the present time now of losing and not being able to be in the race for winning to win in the future, to accrue assets to develop and to get better, that they could actually compete for a championship. And that's what it takes for discipline. We've got to trust the process to grow and to develop, that we can in the end be able to compete for success. But if you don't trust the process and you assume that your life is just going to be microwaved into being great or being successful, you're cheating yourself and you're shooting yourself short. And so it's key to understand that not only do you have a desired end, but you understand that there's a process, there's a routine, there's a road that one must travel to get to a place of discipline. And because of discipline, you're able to achieve things in a place where you're maybe unorganized or you may be not fulfilling. And so it all starts with a process. I was listening to a Navy SEAL in an interview when he was talking about self-discipline, and he says that people see him now from the discipline that he has from being in the military and such things, and people assert that they can't obtain that because they haven't been like him, that they don't possess his personality. And he says, and he alludes to the fact that it was a process. It was a point of intentionality where he put building blocks together to actually grow and to get to a point of being consistent and faithful to actually produce and to pull out of himself things that'll make him a better person. And so that's key for us. And there's a few things I looked at, and I love looking at TED Talks and certain videos that give insights on how to grow and develop. And there's a few common things that they give that I'm going to give as we conclude the video. But I want to deal with this text real quick with Paul's insight to Timothy. As he tells this young man, you're going to be faced with some challenges and some things that may seem bigger than you, that may be oppressing against you, that may be overwhelming. I want you to understand what's inside of you. He says, God has not given you. He's not put inside of you. He's not instilled in you a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and a sound mind. So first, we got to understand that if we're going to be disciplined, if we're going to develop in anything, we've got to be able to fight fear. In its original translation, it deals with cowardness. And we got to understand that there's things that we're going to come against that may seem intimidating, but we've got to be willing to step up to the plate, to be willing to take the challenge. And we've got to fight fear. You've got to be able to fight fear. You've got to be able to say, listen, I know this might scare me out of my boots. This might make me really intimidated and fearful, but I'm at least going to step in the ring. You can never understand the possibility of a fight you never show up to compete in. And if you never show up to a fight, you can't say that you'll win or you'll lose until you actually step in the ring. And that's the conscious battle that we all have to fight, is the battle of our minds. That sometimes, many times, if not all the times, fear defeats us before we even step up to the opponent. It's a battle that is first lost in the mind before reality can even set in to prove what your premonitions are. And so at this point, Paul is helping Timothy, and he says, you got to fight that fear. But he said this is what he has given us. He said he's given us a spirit of power that understands that you have the fuel, you have the ingenuity, you have the capacity inside of you, first of all, to get the mission done. That you actually do have the access and you do have the wherewithal to actually win this battle. But you got to show up, you got to be engaged, and you got to tap into the power. He says he's not giving us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love. Love is the fuel. God is love, as the Bible teaches us, and it gives us motivation and insight of the nature in which we do things. This is the fuel. This is God involved. Is God breathed? Is God insulated? And so we got to know that we possess those things. But lastly, he says of a sound mind or self-discipline. And this deals with the internal ability to engage with the reality that I have to put in place practices to keep me on the right path. I'm not just going to fall into something. I'm not just going to automatically be successful, but I strategically put things in place. And I practice those things to get better and to grow and to develop and to strengthen myself that I can be all who I desire to be. And so these are key things that we've got to remember along this path of life, and the things that we do is that self-discipline is so key, is that if we're not able to come up under what it takes for us to be strong, what it takes for us to be mindful, to be healthy, to be wise, to be spiritual, then we'll always fall short. But we've got to engage with what it takes to be that. You're not going to grow doing the things that you've always done. There's the saying that if you want to do what you've never done, go where you've never been, you got to do what you've never done. And so for us to engage in that opportunity and to experience those things, we've got to see what things are going to help us to grow and to move forward in that life. That what I'm doing right now is not helping me to be a better person, or at least the person I want to be. So what can I plug in? What can I assert